The inflorescence. The flower is a modified shoot, wherein the shoot apical meristem changes to floral meristem. Internodes, they do not elongate, and the axis, it gets condensed. So the apex produces different kinds of floral appendages laterally at successive nodes instead of leaves. So it is always solitary, and the arrangement of flowers on the floral axis is termed as inflorescence. So depending on whether the apex get converted into a flower or it continues to grow. So two major types of inflorescences, they are defined in your book. One is racemose and another is cymose. Now in the racemose type of inflorescence, as you can see in this figure, that it is the type of inflorescence where the main axis, it continues to grow and the flowers are borne laterally in an acropetal succession. What do you mean by acropetal succession? That is, young ones, they are towards the apex and the older ones towards the base. That is called as acropetal succession. Whereas in the cymose type of inflorescence, the main axis, it terminates in a flower, hence is limited in growth, and the flowers, they are borne in a basipetal manner. Basipetal manner means the older ones, they are at the apex and the younger ones towards the base. Flower. Flower is a reproductive unit in the angiosperms and it is meant for sexual reproduction, and a typical flower has 4 different types of whorls which are arranged on the swollen end of the stalk or the pedicel, which is called as thalamus or receptacle. So there are calyx, there are corolla, calyx, there are corolla, which are the accessory organs, whereas the androecium and gynoecium, they are the reproductive organs. In some flowers like lily, the calyx and corolla are not distinct and they are termed as perianth. And when a flower has both androecium and gynoecium, then it is called as a bisexual, and the flower having either only stamens or only carpel, then it is called as unisexual. In symmetry, the flowers may be actinomorphic, that is radial symmetry, or they can be zygomorphic, that is bilateral symmetry. So when a flower can be divided into 2 equal halves, then it is called as radial, and radial halves in any radial plane passing through the center, then it is called as actinomorphic, like mustard, datura, chili. And when it can be divided into 2 similar halves only in one particular vertical plane, then it is called as zygomorphic, like peas, gulmohar, bean, etc., or cassia. A flower is asymmetric or irregular if it cannot be divided into 2 similar halves by any vertical plane. So a flower may be trimerous, pentamerous, or tetramerous when the floral appendages, they are in the multiples of 3, 4 or 5. Here you can see only 2 because of the vertical section. Now here flowers with bracts, which are reduced leaves, they are found. Then such type of flowers, they are called as bracteate, and those without bracts, they are called as ebracteate. Now based on the position of the calyx, corolla, androecium and gynoecium on the ovary, on the thalamus, the flowers, they are described as hypogynous. You can see here the position of hypogynous, where the flower, where the gynoecium occupies the highest position while the other parts are situated below it. And the ovary in which the flowers, they are said to be superior, for example mustard, china rose and brinjal, etc. And if the gynoecium is situated in the center and the other parts of the flower, they are located on the rim of the thalamus, so almost at the same level, then it is called as perigynous. So both these are the perigynous, that is plum, rose, peach, etc. Whereas the epigynous flowers, where the margins of the thalamus, they grow upwards and closing the ovary, which is completely, and getting fused with it, and the other parts of the flower, they arises above the ovary, hence the ovary is said to be inferior, as in flowers of guava, cucumber, or in the ray florets of sunflower. Parts of a flower. Each flower normally has 4 floral whorls: calyx, corolla, androecium and gynoecium. Calyx. Calyx is the outermost whorl of the flower, and these members, they are called as sepals. Generally, the sepals are green, leaf-like, and protect the flower in the bud stage. And the calyx may be gamosepalous, that is, sepals are united, or they may be polysepalous, sepals are free. Corolla. Corolla is composed of petals. Petals are usually brightly colored to attract insects for pollination. Like calyx, corolla may also be united, gamopetalous, or they may be free, that is polypetalous. So the shape and color of the corolla vary greatly in plants, and corolla may be tubular, bell-shaped, funnel-shaped, or wheel-shaped. Estivation. The mode of arrangement of sepals or petals in the floral buds with respect to the other members of the same whorl is known as estivation. So you can see here estivation, the mode of arrangement of sepals or petals in the floral buds with respect to the other members is known as estivation. The main types of estivation are valvate. Now, valvate, twisted, imbricate, quinquential, and vexillary. Now, when the sepals or petals in the whorl just touch one another at the margin without overlapping, for example, in Calotropis, it is said to be valvate. You can see here. And if one margin of the appendage overlaps that of the next one, and so that in the case of China rose, lady's finger, and cotton, it is called as twisted. If the margins of the sepals or petals overlap one another but not in any particular direction, like cassia or gulmohar, and the estivation is called as imbricate. So in peas and beans flower, there are 5 petals, and the largest, which is called as the standard, it overlaps the 2 lateral petal wings, which in turn overlap the two smallest, here you can see this is the in the pea or the flowers of where bean flowers, 5 petals are there, and the largest, which is a standard, you can see here standard, which overlaps the 2 lateral petals, and which are called as the wings, which in turn overlap the 2 smallest, which are the interior petals, which are also called as the keel. So this type of estivation is known as vexillary or papilionaceous. Androecium. Androecium, it is composed of stamens. Androecium is composed of stamens, and each stamen represents the male reproductive organ, which consists of a stalk or a filament or an anther, and each anther is usually bilobed. And each lobe has 2 chambers, which are called as the pollen sacs, and the pollen grains are produced in the pollen sac, and a sterile stamen is called as staminode. Stamens of the flowers may be united with each other, such as petals, or among themselves also. When stamens are attached to the petals, they are called as epipetalous, as in brinjal, or epiphyllous when they are attached to the perianth, as in the flowers of lily. So the stamens in a flower may either remain free, that is polyandrous, or they may be united in varying degrees, and the stamens may be united into one bunch, that is monoadelphous, as in China rose, or in 2 bundles, then it is called as diadelphous, like in peas, or into more than 2 bundles, then it is called as polyadelphous, for example citrus. There may be variations in the length of the stamen within a flower, such as in salvia or in mustard. Gynoecium. Gynoecium is the female reproductive part of the flower and is made up of 1 or more carpel. A carpel consists of 3 parts, namely stigma, style, and the ovary. Ovary is the enlarged basal part on which lies the elongated tube, that is the style, and the style connects to the ovary style connects the ovary to the stigma, and the stigma is usually at the tip of the style and is the receptive surface of the pollen grains. So each ovary bears 1 or more ovules attached to the flattened cushion like placenta. When more than one carpel is present, then they may be free, as in lotus and rose. Then one carpel is present, they may be free, and they are called as apocarpus, and they may be syncarpus when the carpels they are fused like in mustard and tomato. After fertilization, the ovules develop into the seeds and the ovary matures into the fruit. Now let's talk about placentation. Placentation is the arrangement of the ovules within the ovary. The placentation are of different types. It can be marginal, it can be axial, it can be parietal, it can be free central, or it can be basal placentation. In marginal placentation, the placenta forms a ridge along the ventral suture of the ovary, and the ovules are borne on this ridge, forming two rows like in peas. And when the placenta is axial and the ovules they are attached into the multilocular ovary, and the ovules they are borne in this ridges forming two rows. That is in a pea, whereas in the case of axial placentation, the ovules are attached in the multilocular ovary, and this type of placentation is axial like in China rose, tomato or lemon. In parietal placentation, the ovules develop on the inner wall. You can see here they develop on the inner wall of the ovary or on the peripheral part. So ovary is one chambered, but it becomes two chambered due to the formation of a false septum like in mustard or in argemone. So when the ovules are born on the central axis and the septa they are absent like in dianthus or in primrose, the placentation is called as free central. In basal placentation, the placenta develops at the base of the ovary and a single ovule is attached to it, as in sunflower or in marigold. Fruit. Fruit is the characteristic feature of the flowering plant. It is a mature or a ripened ovary developed after fertilization. If a fruit is formed without fertilization of the ovary, it is called as Parthenogarpic fruit. Generally, the fruit consists of a wall or the pericarp and the seed. The pericarp may be dry or fleshy, and when the pericarp is thick and fleshy, it is differentiated into epicarp, the middle mesocarp, and the inner endocarp. In mango and coconut, the fruit is known as drupe. They develop from monocarpellary superior ovaries and are one-seeded. In mango, the pericarp is well differentiated into the outer epicarp, middle fleshy mesocarp, and an inner stony or hard endocarp. In coconut, which is also a drupe, the mesocarp is fibrous. Seed. The ovules after fertilization develops into seeds, and seed is made up of a seed coat and an embryo. The embryo is made up of radicle, an embryonal axis, and like in wheat or in maize, and in some there are two cotyledons like in grams or peas. Now structure of a dicot and monocot seeds we will discuss. First we discuss the monocot seed. Generally the monocot seeds are endospermic, but like in orchids they are non-endospermic, and the seeds of the cereals like maize, seed coat is membranous and generally fused with the fruit wall, and the endosperm is bulky and it stores the food. The outer covering of endosperm separates the embryo by a proteinaceous layer which is called as aleurone layer, and the embryo is small and is situated in a groove, you can see here, at one end of the endosperm, and it consists of one large and shield shaped cotyledon known as scutellum. This is scutellum, you can see here, and a short axis with a plumule and radicle. And the plumule and radicle, they are enclosed in sheaths which are called as coleotile and coleorhiza.